Pay very close attention, because what you are about to hear will shatter something inside you. Not in a way that breaks you, in a way that finally sets you free. You have been lied to your entire life. You have been told that if you work hard, stay humble, play by the rules, and wait your turn, power will eventually come to you. That one day, someone will notice your effort. That one day, the universe will reward your patience. That one day, the doors will open simply because you deserve it. But let me ask you something. How long have you been waiting? How many years have you spent doing everything right, following every instruction, being the reliable one, the patient one, the one who never complains, and yet here you are, watching someone else sit in the chair that should have been yours? Here you are, watching people with half your talent, half your discipline, and none of your integrity rise above you as if gravity itself decided to make an exception for them. You want to know why? You want to know the real reason? Because power is not earned. Power is taken. And until you understand that single brutal truth, you will remain exactly where you are, stuck, overlooked, invisible. This is not motivation. This is not a pep talk. This is a reckoning. And by the time this video ends, you will not be the same person who pressed play. Something inside you will shift. Something ancient and dormant will awaken. And you will finally see the world not as you were taught to see it, but as it actually is. Let that settle for a moment. Let the discomfort find its place in your chest. Because discomfort is where transformation begins. And comfort, that warm, familiar, suffocating blanket you have been wrapped in your entire life. Comfort is where ambition goes to die. Now let me paint a picture you already know. You wake up every morning with a fire in your chest. You know you are capable of more. You know, deep in your bones, that you were not designed for mediocrity. And yet, the world around you seems designed to keep you there. You go to work, and you watch the loudest person in the room get the promotion. Not the smartest, not the most capable, the loudest. You sit in meetings where your ideas are ignored, only to hear them repeated by someone else 5 minutes later, wrapped in confidence you were never taught to wear. You come home and scroll through your phone, watching people who started after you, who know less than you, who risked nothing, living the life you have been building toward for years. And something gnaws at you, something quiet, something you have been too afraid to name. It is not jealousy. It is recognition. You recognize that the game you have been playing does not reward what you were told it rewards. You recognize that the rules you memorized were written by people who had no intention of following them. You recognize that somewhere along the way, someone handed you a map, and you followed it faithfully, only to arrive at a destination that was never meant to be yours. This is the moment where most people stop. This is the moment where they swallow the bitterness, adjust their expectations, and convince themselves that wanting more is somehow ungrateful. They tell themselves that ambition is arrogance, that wanting power is selfish, that the desire to dominate your environment is a flaw, not a feature. And that is exactly what keeps them powerless. That internal surrender, that quiet acceptance of a life that does not fit, is the most dangerous form of self-destruction there is, because it does not look like destruction. It looks like maturity. It looks like wisdom. It looks like peace. But it is not peace. It is defeat dressed in comfortable clothing. But not you. Not anymore. Because you clicked on this video. And that tells me something profound about who you are becoming. It tells me that you are done waiting. It tells me that the polite version of you, the version that smiles while being overlooked, the version that works twice as hard for half the recognition, that version is dying, and something colder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous is taking its place. Good. Let it. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most people spend their entire lives refusing to accept. He wrote about it over 500 years ago, and the world has been trying to bury his words ever since, not because they were wrong, but because they were too right, too uncomfortable, too revealing. In his masterwork, The Prince, Machiavelli did not write about how the world should be. He wrote about how the world is. And that distinction, that single, razor-thin distinction, is the difference between the people who accumulate power and the people who spend their lives wondering why they never do. Machiavelli observed that the men who rose to power were not always the most virtuous. They were not always the most intelligent. They were not even always the most talented. What they were, without exception, was willing. Willing to see the world without the comforting fog of idealism. Willing to act when others hesitated. Willing to take what they wanted while everyone else stood in line, clutching a ticket that was never going to be called. He wrote, and listen closely, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose." Now, most people hear that and recoil. They hear cruelty. They hear tyranny. They hear a justification for ruthlessness. But that is because most people read Machiavelli with the eyes of someone who has never held power and has never understood its mechanics. When you read him with the eyes of someone who understands the architecture of human behavior, you hear something entirely different. You hear a warning. You hear a man saying, "The world will not give you what you deserve. The world will give you what you are willing to claim." And those who wait to be loved, who wait to be chosen, who wait to be given permission, those are the ones who spend their lives serving the ambitions of someone else. And that is the foundation of everything you are about to learn. You see, there is a disease that infects good people, capable people, people like you. And the disease is this: the belief that competence alone is enough. The belief that if you just do your job well enough, if you just demonstrate your value clearly enough, the world will respond with fairness. It is a beautiful belief. It is a comforting belief. And it is a lie that has destroyed more potential than any war, any famine, any catastrophe in human history. Because the world does not operate on merit. It never has. It operates on perception. It operates on positioning. It operates on the willingness of one person to step forward and claim what another person was too timid to reach for. Merit is the story told to the workers. Perception is the tool used by the rulers. Think about every major shift of power in history. Every empire that rose, every kingdom that fell, every revolution that changed the map. Not one of them happened because someone waited patiently. Not one of them happened because someone earned enough approval. They happened because someone decided. Someone looked at the existing structure and said, "This is mine now." Whether it was Caesar crossing the Rubicon, knowing that his action would either make him emperor or end his life. Whether it was a young entrepreneur walking into a room full of investors with nothing but an idea and an unshakable belief in their own vision. Whether it was the quiet individual in a corporate meeting who, instead of waiting to be acknowledged, simply began speaking with the authority of someone who expected to be heard. The mechanism is identical. Power shifts not when it is deserved, but when it is seized. Not when someone earns enough credentials, but when someone decides that credentials are irrelevant to the act of claiming what is theirs. And this is what was never taught to you. In school, they taught you to raise your hand and wait to be called on. At work, they taught you to submit your request and wait for approval. In relationships, they taught you to be patient and wait for the other person to see your worth. Wait, wait, wait. Your entire life has been an exercise in waiting. And what has it gotten you? A front row seat to watch other people take what you wanted. A lifetime of perfect preparation for a moment that never arrives. Because that moment was never going to arrive on its own. It was always waiting for you to create it. Machiavelli would look at your life, and he would not feel sorry for you. He would feel frustrated, because he would see someone with all the raw materials for greatness, all the intelligence, all the discipline, all the capacity for strategic thinking, who has been neutralized by a single, catastrophic misconception. The misconception that power comes to those who deserve it. He would see a sword that has never been drawn, a weapon that has been polished and sharpened and maintained with extraordinary care, but never once swung. And he would ask you the question that no one in your life has ever had the courage to ask: what are you waiting for? It does not. Power comes to those who understand how it works. And how it works is not complicated. It is not some grand mystery locked away in ancient texts, accessible only to scholars and philosophers. It is brutally, almost insultingly simple. Power flows to the person who acts as if they already have it. Power flows to the person who does not ask for permission. Power flows to the person who creates their own authority instead of waiting for someone else to grant it. Power flows like water, always downhill, always toward the lowest point of resistance. And if you are the one creating resistance, if you are the one standing there with your hand raised, waiting for someone to call on you, then power is flowing around you, past you, away from you, toward the person who simply reached out and took it. Let me be even more direct with you. You have been playing a game, a long, exhausting, soul-draining game, and you have been playing it by rules that were designed to keep you in your place. The rules of politeness, the rules of humility, the rules of deference. And every single one of those rules was written by someone who already had power, for the express purpose of making sure you never got any. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is history. That is the observable, documented, repeated pattern of every civilization that has ever existed. Those at the top create systems that protect their position. And the most effective system ever invented is not a wall, not an army, not a law. It is a belief. The belief that waiting is noble. The belief that taking is wrong. The belief that your turn will come if you are just good enough. Your turn will not come. Your turn does not exist. There is no line. There is no ticket. There is no cosmic ledger keeping track of your sacrifices and preparing a reward. There is only this: the moment you decide to stop waiting and start moving. The moment you realize that every second spent waiting is a second spent building someone else's empire, while yours remains a blueprint collecting dust. And that decision, that single, irrevocable decision, is what separates the powerful from the powerless. It is not talent, it is not luck, it is not connections, though those help. It is the willingness to act without guarantee, the willingness to reach for something before you are sure you deserve it, the willingness to occupy space that no one offered you, the willingness to be uncomfortable, to be judged, to be misunderstood, because the alternative is infinitely worse. The alternative is a life of quiet competence, invisible excellence, and permanent irrelevance. Machiavelli called this virtù. And no, that word does not mean virtue in the way you understand it. It does not mean goodness or morality or righteousness. In Machiavelli's vocabulary, virtù means something far more dangerous and far more powerful. It means the ability to impose your will on circumstances. It means the capacity to look at a chaotic, unfair, indifferent world and say, I will shape this to my advantage, not through complaint, not through waiting, not through hoping, through action, through decision, through the deliberate, calculated application of your intelligence and your will upon the raw material of your circumstances. And here is what makes this concept so threatening to the existing order. When you develop virtù, you become unpredictable. You become uncontrollable. You become the kind of person who does not fit neatly into someone else's plan. And the world, understand this clearly, the world is designed to make you fit into someone else's plan. Your boss has a plan for you. It involves you staying productive, staying compliant, and staying exactly where you are. Your social circle has expectations for you. They involve you remaining recognizable, remaining predictable, remaining the version of you that makes them comfortable. Your family has a role for you. Society has a box for you. And as long as you stay in that box, as long as you play the part you were assigned, everyone around you is comfortable. Everyone is at ease. Everyone except you. The moment you step outside that box, the moment you begin to act with virtù, something remarkable happens. The same people who ignored you will suddenly pay attention. The same people who overlooked you will suddenly feel uneasy. Not because you have changed what you are, but because you have changed how you move. You have shifted from reactive to proactive, from passive to strategic, from waiting to taking. And that shift, that subtle, almost invisible recalibration of your relationship to the world sends shockwaves through every room you enter. People may not be able to articulate what changed. They may not be able to point to a specific moment or a specific action, but they will feel it. They will feel that the person standing in front of them is no longer asking for a seat at the table. That person is building their own table. And that shift, that invisible internal shift, is more powerful than any promotion, any title, any external validation you have ever chased. Because external power is fragile. It can be given and it can be taken away. A title can be revoked. A position can be eliminated. A reputation can be attacked. But the internal decision to stop asking and start commanding your own reality, that cannot be taken from you. That lives in a place no one can reach. That is yours. Permanently, irrevocably, unconditionally. Now, I need you to understand something critical before we go any further. When I say power is taken, I am not talking about manipulation. I am not talking about stepping on people. I'm not talking about becoming cruel or ruthless or heartless. That is a childish interpretation of Machiavelli, and it is the interpretation that people who have never read him love to repeat. It is the interpretation that allows mediocre minds to dismiss his genius without engaging with it. What I am talking about is something far more sophisticated and far more difficult than mere cruelty. I am talking about the refusal to be passive in your own life. I am talking about the decision to be the architect of your circumstances rather than the victim of them. I am talking about recognizing that the world is a chessboard, and you have been sitting on the sideline, watching other people play with your pieces, move your pawns, sacrifice your potential for their gain. Taking power means taking responsibility. Complete, total, unflinching responsibility for where you are and where you are going. It means taking initiative when no one asks you to. It means taking the risk of being wrong, being rejected, being judged, because the alternative, the safe, quiet, comfortable alternative, is a life of permanent smallness. And you are not built for smallness. I can tell. Because small people do not seek out content like this. Small people do not stay awake at night wondering why they feel trapped in a life that does not match the vision in their head. Small people do not feel the gnawing, restless hunger that brought you here. You are here because something inside you knows, something that predates your education, your conditioning, your carefully constructed humility. Something ancient and unbreakable knows that you are meant to operate at a level you have not yet allowed yourself to reach. And the only thing standing between where you are and where that instinct is pulling you is a set of beliefs you did not choose. Beliefs about waiting. Beliefs about fairness. Beliefs about what good people are supposed to want and how good people are supposed to behave. Machiavelli would tell you to burn those beliefs, not metaphorically, literally discard them. Take each one, hold it up to the light of your experience, and ask yourself, has this belief served me, or has it served the people around me? Has this belief brought me closer to the life I want, or has it kept me safely contained in the life others want for me? Examine every assumption you hold about how success works, how influence is gained, how respect is built, and ask yourself one question. Is this true because I have tested it? Or is this true because someone told me it was? Because there is a world of difference between wisdom you have earned through experience and programming you have absorbed through repetition. And most of what you believe about power, about success, about the way the world works, is not wisdom. It is programming. It was installed in you before you had the capacity to question it, and it was installed by people who benefited from your compliance. Your teachers benefited from your obedience. Your employers benefit from your patience. Your society benefits from your predictability, and none of them, not one, has any incentive to tell you the truth about how the game actually works. But I do, and Machiavelli did. And that is why his words have survived for over 5 centuries, while the philosophies of gentler, more palatable thinkers have faded into footnotes. Because the truth does not expire. The truth does not become obsolete. The truth does not go out of fashion. The truth about power, about human nature, about the mechanics of influence and control, is as relevant today as it was in Renaissance Italy. The platforms have changed. The currencies have changed. The costumes have changed. But the architecture of power has not moved an inch. The same principles that allowed a Florentine diplomat to navigate the treacherous courts of Renaissance Italy are the same principles that will allow you to navigate the boardroom, the social circle, the negotiation table, the relationship, the career, the life that you are building. And you are about to learn that architecture, not in theory. Not in abstract philosophical terms that sound impressive, but change nothing. In raw, applicable, immediately usable terms. You are about to learn how to walk into a room and change its temperature without saying a word. How to speak in a way that makes people lean forward, not because you are loud, but because you are precise. How to make decisions that compound over time until your position is unassailable. How to project an authority that does not need a title to be felt, a name tag to be recognized, or a credential to be respected. How to take what the world refuses to give you and make it so thoroughly yours that no one even remembers it was ever up for grabs. But this is only the beginning. This is only the foundation. The mindset shift, as powerful as it is just the first layer of a much deeper, much more dangerous transformation. Because understanding that power is taken is step 1. Knowing how to take it, knowing the specific techniques, the specific patterns of behavior, the specific ways of thinking and speaking and moving that transform this understanding from a philosophy into a weapon. That is what comes next. If you are still here, if something in you has been nodding along with every word, if you felt that cold recognition, that electric feeling of finally hearing the truth you always suspected but never had the language for, then do not stop now. Do not let the old programming pull you back to safety. Because what follows will not just change how you think. It will change how you move, how you speak, how you occupy space in a room. It will change the way people look at you when you enter. It will change the way they remember you when you leave. It will change the gravitational field of your presence until people are drawn to you, not because you asked for their attention, but because your aura made their attention involuntary. Stay with me. The real power play has only just begun. Now that the fog has been lifted, now that you see the game for what it truly is, it is time to go deeper. Because seeing the truth is not enough. Knowing that power is taken is not enough. You need to understand the mechanics. You need to understand the architecture behind those who command influence, who walk into rooms and bend reality around them, who speak and create silence, who decide and watch the world rearrange itself to accommodate their vision. This is not magic. This is not charisma you are born with or without. This is a system. A cold, precise, learnable system that has been used by every dominant figure in history, whether they knew it consciously or operated on instinct refined by necessity. Machiavelli understood this system better than anyone. He did not just observe power, he dissected it. He pulled apart the mechanisms of influence the way a surgeon pulls apart tissue, not with emotion, but with clinical, unflinching precision. And what he found beneath the surface of every great leader, every feared prince, Every respected sovereign was not what you would expect. It was not strength in the way most people understand strength. It was not aggression. It was not dominance through volume or violence. What he found was something far more subtle and far more terrifying. He found calculation. He found restraint. He found the deliberate, strategic deployment of personality as a weapon. Let me explain what that means in terms you can use today in your life, starting now. The first element of the Machiavellian mindset is what I call controlled opacity. This is the art of being selectively transparent. Most people, and this is their fatal error, most people believe that openness is a virtue in all situations. They believe that sharing their thoughts, their feelings, their plans, their insecurities is a form of strength. They call it authenticity. They call it vulnerability. And in certain intimate, trusted relationships, they are right. But in the arena of power, in the workplace, in negotiations, in competitive social dynamics, total transparency is not authenticity. It is ammunition. Every piece of information you volunteer about yourself is a piece of leverage you hand to someone who may not deserve it. Every emotion you display without purpose is a signal that others can read and use against you. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should be like a fox and a lion. The lion represents strength, the ability to intimidate and overpower when necessary. But the fox is the one that survives. The fox is the one that navigates traps. The fox is the one that sees the snare before stepping into it. And the fox does this not through force, but through concealment, through the strategic withholding of information, through the ability to show one face while protecting another. This does not mean becoming a liar. This does not mean being fake. This means understanding that not every room deserves every part of you. This means recognizing that your thoughts, your plans, your emotions, and your intentions are valuable resources, and valuable resources are not scattered carelessly. They are deployed with precision. When you walk into a negotiation, the other party does not need to know your bottom line. When you sit in a meeting, your colleagues do not need to know your frustrations. When you interact with someone who has not earned your trust, they do not need to know your fears, your doubts, your next move. You share what serves your position. You withhold what protects it. This is not deception. This is intelligence. This is the difference between a person who controls the narrative and a person who is controlled by it. Think about the most powerful people you have ever encountered. Not the loudest, not the most aggressive. The most powerful. The ones who made you feel a certain gravity when they entered a room. What did they have in common? They revealed very little about themselves. They listened more than they spoke. They asked questions instead of offering answers. They created an air of mystery, not through dramatic gestures, but through the simple, devastating discipline of restraint. They understood that silence is not emptiness. Silence is a canvas onto which other people project their assumptions, their fears, their respect. And a strategist controls what is projected by controlling what is revealed. Practice this, starting tomorrow. In every interaction before you speak, ask yourself, does this serve my position? If the answer is no, hold it. Let the silence do the work. Let others fill the void. And watch how the dynamic shifts. Watch how people begin to pay more attention to what you do say, precisely because you say less. Watch how your words gain weight, gain gravity, gain the kind of impact that comes not from volume, but from scarcity. The second element is what I call strategic indifference. And this may be the most counterintuitive lesson you will ever learn. In a world that teaches you to care about everything, to show enthusiasm, to display eagerness, to prove your desire for outcomes, strategic indifference is a form of power that most people cannot even comprehend, let alone deploy. Here is the principle. The person who needs the outcome least controls the outcome most. Read that again. Let it sink through every layer of conditioning. The person who needs the outcome least controls the outcome most. This is true in negotiation. The party who can walk away holds the power. This is true in relationships. The person who is least desperate for approval sets the terms of the dynamic. This is true in business. The company that does not chase clients attracts the best ones. And this is true in your daily life, in every interaction where something is at stake. When you display eagerness, when you show that you need something, when your body language, your tone, your behavior screams that you are invested in a particular outcome, you hand the other person a lever. You give them the ability to withhold what you want, to make you wait, to raise the price, to set conditions, to test you. Because they know that you need this, and need is the currency of weakness in any negotiation of power. Machiavelli understood this intimately. He observed that the princes who begged for alliances were the ones who were exploited. The princes who appeared self-sufficient, who projected an image of abundance and independence, were the ones who attracted alliances on favorable terms. Because the world is drawn to those who do not need it. The world chases those who are willing to walk away. The world offers its best terms to those who seem perfectly content without them. Now, I am not telling you to become emotionless. I am not telling you to stop caring about outcomes. I am telling you to control the display. Care deeply on the inside. Plan meticulously. Work relentlessly. But on the outside, project calm, project abundance. Project the unshakable confidence of someone who has options, even when your options are limited. Because perception, remember this forever, perception is more powerful than reality, and the perception of indifference is more powerful than the most passionate plea. Here is how this works in practice. You are in a job interview. The old version of you would sit on the edge of your seat, answer every question with desperate enthusiasm, and leave radiating the need to be chosen. The strategic version of you walks in prepared, answers with competence and composure, asks sharp questions that demonstrate you are evaluating them as much as they are evaluating you, and leaves with the energy of someone who has other options. Which version gets the offer? Every hiring manager in the world will tell you it is the second one. Because desire repels, but indifference attracts. Desperation signals low value. Composure signals high value. This is not a trick. This is the fundamental physics of human perception. Apply this in relationships. The person who is always available, always eager, always responsive, always willing to rearrange their life for another person does not inspire devotion. They inspire complacency. They become furniture, familiar, predictable, taken for granted. But the person who maintains their own center, who has a life rich enough that they cannot always be reached, who demonstrates through their actions that they value their own time and presence, that person becomes magnetic, not through manipulation, but through the natural law that scarcity creates value. You do not need to play games. You need to have a life compelling enough that your absence is felt. And when your absence is felt, your presence becomes powerful. The third element is calculated authority. Most people wait for authority to be given to them. They wait for the title, the promotion, the designation. The moment when someone above them says, "You now have permission to lead." And because they wait, they never receive it. Because authority, true authority, the kind that makes people listen and follow and respect, is never given. It is assumed. It is projected. It is created by the person who decides, in a single moment, that they will no longer wait for permission to operate at a higher level. Watch how this works in any group dynamic. There is always someone who naturally takes charge, not because they were appointed, not because they are the most qualified, but because they stepped into the vacuum. They spoke first. They made the decision, while others were still deliberating. They projected certainty, while others radiated doubt. And once they occupied that position, once they established themselves as the authority, the group organized around them. Not because anyone chose them, because they chose themselves. Machiavelli wrote extensively about this. He observed that the most effective leaders were not those who inherited their power, but those who created it. He distinguished between principalities acquired by fortune and those acquired by virtue. The ones acquired by fortune, by luck, by inheritance, by being in the right place at the right time, those were fragile. They collapsed at the first challenge because the leader had no understanding of how they got there and no capacity to maintain what they had not built. But the ones acquired by virtue, by deliberate action, by strategic calculation, by the sheer force of will applied to circumstance, those endured. Because the leader who builds their own authority understands its architecture. They know which walls are load-bearing. They know where the cracks might form. They know how to repair, reinforce, and expand what they have built. You do not need anyone's permission to be an authority in your field, your social circle, your workplace, your life. You need the courage to act as one. Speak with certainty. Make decisions quickly. When asked for your opinion, give it without hedging, without apologizing, without the qualifiers that signal uncertainty. Instead of saying, "I think maybe we should consider," say, "Here is what we need to do." That single shift in language, that removal of hesitation, that replacement of tentative suggestion with direct assertion will change how every person in that room perceives you. Not because you became more knowledgeable, but because you started sounding like someone who believes in what they know. And belief, projected with calm conviction, is indistinguishable from authority. The fourth element is emotional sovereignty. This is the fortress within. This is the inner citadel that no external force can breach, no insult can crack, no rejection can shatter. Emotional sovereignty means that your internal state is yours alone. It means that no other person, no event, no circumstance has the power to dictate how you feel unless you grant that power willingly and consciously. Most people live in a state of emotional dependency. Their mood is determined by their inbox. Their confidence is determined by someone else's opinion. Their sense of self is determined by the last interaction they had. They are thermometers, passively reflecting the temperature of their environment. The Machiavellian mindset demands that you become a thermostat. You set the temperature. You determine the emotional climate of every room you enter. And you do this not by suppressing your emotions, but by mastering them, by understanding that emotions are information, not instructions. They tell you something. They do not tell you what to do. When someone insults you, the emotion of anger tells you that a boundary has been crossed. Good. That is useful information. But anger does not tell you to react immediately. Anger does not tell you to lash out, to defend yourself, to escalate the conflict. That is the reaction of someone who is ruled by their emotions. The sovereign, the one who has mastered themselves, receives the information, processes it, and then chooses a response based on strategy, not impulse. Sometimes that response is silence. Sometimes it is a calm, devastating observation. Sometimes it is walking away. And sometimes, rarely, it is controlled confrontation. But it is always chosen. Never reflexive, never automatic, never the predictable reaction that your opponent was counting on to give them control of the exchange. Machiavelli wrote about this with ruthless clarity. He observed that leaders who acted on emotion were invariably destroyed by their own reactions. The prince who let his anger dictate his response to insult created enemies unnecessarily. The prince who let his fear dictate his response to threat appeared weak and invited further aggression. But the prince who maintained composure, who received provocation with the calm detachment of someone playing a game they knew they would win, that prince became untouchable, not because he was invincible, but because his opponents could never predict his response. And unpredictability in the game of power is the ultimate advantage. Think about this in your own life. Think about every time you reacted to provocation and regretted it. Every time you sent the angry text. Every time you said the thing you could not take back. Every time your emotions drove you into a position of weakness. Now imagine a version of you that absorbs the same provocation and responds with nothing. Not nothing born of weakness, nothing born of supreme confidence. A pause, a look, a slight, almost imperceptible smile that says, without words, "You cannot reach me. You have no power here." The impact of that silence, that stillness, that refusal to engage on someone else's terms is devastating. It says more than any argument. It communicates more than any defense. It projects the kind of power that cannot be challenged because it refuses to participate in challenges it does not choose. The fifth element, and perhaps the most important, is what I call the long game. In a world of instant gratification, in a culture that measures success in moments rather than movements, the ability to think in years instead of days is a superpower that almost no one possesses. Most people want results now. They want the promotion now. They want the recognition now. They want the power now. And because they want it now, they make decisions that optimize for the short term and devastate the long term. They take the easy win. They choose the quick reward. They sacrifice positioning for immediate comfort. And 5 years later, they look around and wonder why they are in exactly the same place. The Machiavellian thinker understands that power is a compound investment. Every decision, every interaction, every strategic choice you make today is a deposit into an account that will pay returns for years. The connection you build today may become crucial 3 years from now. The skill you develop today may open a door that does not yet exist. The reputation you cultivate today, through consistent, deliberate, strategic behavior, becomes an asset that compounds until it is worth more than any single opportunity. Machiavelli advised his prince to always think several moves ahead. Not one move, several. To consider not just the immediate consequence of an action, but the consequence of the consequence. To ask not just what will happen next, but what will happen next, and then what will happen after that, and then what position will I be in when the dust settles. This kind of thinking is rare. It is uncomfortable. It requires the discipline to sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term dominance. But it is the thinking that separates the temporary winner from the permanent power. Apply this to your career. Instead of chasing the highest-paying job right now, ask yourself which position gives you the best platform for where you want to be in 5 years. Instead of demanding recognition right now, ask yourself what skills, connections, and reputation you need to build so that recognition becomes inevitable. Instead of reacting to every slight and every setback right now, ask yourself how you want to be perceived when this chapter of your life is reviewed from a distance. Apply this to your relationships. Instead of seeking immediate validation, build the kind of presence that earns lasting respect. Instead of pursuing people who give you attention today, cultivate the quality of character that attracts people of substance over time. Instead of burning bridges when you are angry, maintain connections that may serve a purpose you cannot yet see. Apply this to every domain of your life, because the person who thinks in years, while everyone else thinks in days, is playing a fundamentally different game. And in that game, time is not an enemy. Time is an ally. Every day that passes compounds your advantage. Every week that passes deepens your position. Every month that passes widens the gap between you and everyone who chose the short game. Now let me bring all 5 elements together. Because individually, they are powerful. But combined, they create something that transcends any single technique or tactic. They create a presence, an aura, a gravitational field that draws opportunities, people, and circumstances toward you without effort. When you combine controlled opacity with strategic indifference, you become someone people cannot read and therefore cannot manipulate. When you add calculated authority, you become someone people instinctively follow. When you layer in emotional sovereignty, you become someone people cannot destabilize. And when you anchor all of this in the long game, you become someone whose power grows quietly, invisibly, unstoppably, until the day you look up and realize that the world has rearranged itself around you. This is not theory. This is the observable pattern of every individual who has ever risen to lasting influence. They were not louder than everyone else. They were more strategic. They were not more talented than everyone else. They were more disciplined. They were not luckier than everyone else. They were more patient. And they understood, with a clarity that most people never develop, that power is not a destination. It is a practice, a daily, deliberate, relentless practice of thinking, speaking, moving, and deciding in ways that compound your advantage over time. But understanding these elements is one thing. Deploying them in real situations, in the heat of conflict, in the pressure of negotiation, in the complexity of human relationships, that requires something more. That requires specific, practical, actionable tactics that you can implement starting today. And that is what comes next. But the coldest play is still ahead. The part where I show you exactly how to walk into any situation and bend it to your will. Curious to know how these principles translate into words you can say, moves you can make, decisions you can execute? Then keep watching, because the next phase of your transformation is about to begin. Now we enter the arena. Everything you have learned so far, the philosophy, the mindset, the 5 elements of Machiavellian power, all of it has been preparation. This is where the sword meets flesh. This is where ideas become action. This is where you stop understanding power and start wielding it. Because the world does not care about your understanding. The world only responds to what you do. And what you are about to learn to do will make you dangerous in ways that the people around you will feel, but never fully comprehend. Let me start with the most immediate, most practical, most transformative skill you can develop. The art of strategic communication, not public speaking, not eloquence, not the ability to fill a room with noise. Strategic communication is the precise, deliberate use of words, silence, timing, and tone to control the direction and outcome of any interaction. It is a weapon that requires no physical strength, no title, no credential. It requires only awareness and discipline. And once you master it, you will never again walk out of a conversation feeling like you lost. Tactic 1. The power of the pause. When someone asks you a question, especially a challenging one, do not answer immediately. Pause. Let 2, 3, 4 seconds of silence hang in the air. This does 3 things simultaneously. First, it signals that you are not reactive. You do not jump when someone throws a stimulus at you. You process, you choose, you respond on your own timeline, not theirs. Second, it creates anticipation. The longer you pause, the more weight your eventual response carries. The other person leans in. They pay attention. Because silence from a confident person is not awkward. It is magnetic. Third, and most importantly, it gives you time to think. Most people say things they regret because they feel pressured to fill silence. They blurt out the first thing that comes to mind, and that first thing is almost never the best thing. The pause eliminates this. It gives you the space to choose the response that serves you best, not the response that was most readily available. Practice this in your next conversation. When someone asks you something, especially something designed to put you on the spot, do not rush. Take a breath. Let the silence land. And then, only then, deliver your response with the calm precision of someone who is never caught off guard. Watch the change in how people receive your words. Watch how the same sentence, delivered after a deliberate pause, carries 3 times the impact of the same sentence delivered in haste. Tactic 2. The redirected question. This is one of the most powerful tools in any communicator's arsenal, and almost no one uses it. When someone asks you a question that you do not want to answer, or that puts you at a disadvantage, do not answer it. Redirect. Ask a question in return, not defensively, not evasively, smoothly, with genuine curiosity. If someone says, "Why did you make that decision?" you do not scramble to justify yourself. You say with composure, "That is an interesting question. What would you have done?" Instantly, the dynamic shifts. You are no longer the one being interrogated. You are the one conducting the interview. The spotlight moves off you and onto them. And in that shift, you reclaim control of the conversation. Machiavelli practiced this instinctively in his diplomatic career. He understood that the person asking the questions holds the power. The person answering the questions is performing. They are auditioning. They are justifying. They are operating from a position of defense. But the person asking the questions is evaluating, selecting, judging. They are operating from a position of authority, so whenever you find yourself being pushed into the answering role, redirect. Turn the question around. Ask for clarification. Ask for their perspective. Ask anything that shifts you from the defendant's chair to the judge's bench. Tactic 3. The economy of words. You have been taught that more is better. More explanation, more justification, more detail, more evidence, more words. This is wrong. In the realm of power, less is infinitely more. The person who uses 40 words when 10 will do communicates insecurity. They are over-explaining. They are padding their statement with qualifiers and cushioning because they are not confident that their core message is strong enough to stand on its own. The person who uses 10 words communicates certainty. They trust their message. They trust their authority. They do not need to prop it up with filler. Here is an exercise. For the next week, before every statement you make in a professional or social setting, cut your intended response in half. If you were going to say 4 sentences, say 2. If you were going to say 2 sentences, say 1. If you were going to explain something in a paragraph, reduce it to a line. Feel the discomfort of saying less. Resist the urge to add more. And observe the effect. Observe how your shortened statements land with more force. Observe how people listen more carefully because they sense that every word you say has been chosen, not thrown. Observe how the simple act of saying less gives you the aura of someone who does not waste anything, least of all their words. Machiavelli himself was a master of concision. His most devastating observations are single sentences. His most powerful insights fit on a line. He did not need paragraphs to make his point, because his point was sharp enough to cut through any padding. Emulate this. Let your words be blades, not blankets. Tactic 4. Controlled body language. Your body speaks louder than your mouth ever will, and most people have no idea what their body is saying. They cross their arms when they feel defensive, broadcasting their vulnerability to everyone in the room. They avoid eye contact when they feel inferior, signaling submission to everyone watching. They fidget, shift, touch their face, look at their phone, and through every one of these unconscious movements, they leak information about their internal state. A strategic individual controls these leaks, not through stiffness or artificiality, but through awareness. Here are the fundamentals. First, occupy space. Do not shrink. Do not fold your body into the smallest possible footprint. When you sit, take the space you need. When you stand, stand with your feet planted and your shoulders open. This is not aggression. This is presence. Your body is telling the world that you belong here, that you are not apologizing for the space you occupy, that you are not trying to make yourself small so that others feel comfortable. Second, maintain eye contact. Not staring, not the unblinking intensity of a predator, but the calm, steady gaze of someone who is not afraid to be seen. When someone speaks to you, look at them. When you speak to someone, look at them. Do not dart your eyes. Do not look down. Let your gaze communicate that you are here, you are present, and you are not intimidated. Third, slow your movements. Rushed, jerky, frantic movement communicates anxiety. Slow, deliberate movement communicates control. When you reach for your glass, reach slowly. When you turn to face someone, turn deliberately. When you walk, walk with purpose, not speed. Every movement should look like it was chosen, not reflexive. This alone, this single adjustment to the speed of your physical presence, will fundamentally change how people perceive you. Tactic 5. The art of strategic agreement. This is a technique that Machiavelli would have loved, and it is devastatingly effective in any confrontation. When someone challenges you, when someone attacks your position, when someone pushes back on your idea, do not fight. Agree. But agree strategically. Here is what that looks like. Someone says, "Your approach is too risky." The weak response is to defend. No, it is not. Here is why. The defensive posture puts you in a position of justification. You are now operating from below. The strategic response is, "You are right. It is risky." And that is exactly why it will work. With those words, you have done something remarkable. You have absorbed their attack, neutralized it, and then used its energy to strengthen your own position. You agreed with their premise, but rejected their conclusion. You took their weapon and turned it into your ammunition. This works in every context. In business, that is expensive. Yes, it is. Because quality at this level does not come at a discount. In relationships, you are being too distant. You are right. I value my space. It is one of the things that makes my presence meaningful. In social dynamics, you are too quiet. I am. I learned early that the person who listens the most understands the most. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to reaffirm your position when you stop defending and start leveraging. Now let me give you specific scenarios, because tactics without context are theory, and theory without application is useless. Scenario 1. The workplace underminer. You have someone in your professional life who subtly undermines you. They take credit for your ideas. They interrupt you in meetings. They go to your superiors with information that makes you look bad. The weak response, the response you have probably been using, is to confront them directly, to complain to management, or to simply endure it and hope it stops. None of these work. Direct confrontation alerts them that you see them as a threat, which inflates their sense of power. Complaining to management makes you look like someone who cannot handle their own problems. Enduring it signals that you accept the behavior, which guarantees it continues. The Machiavellian response is different. You do not confront. You do not complain. You outmaneuver. First, you begin documenting everything, not for a complaint, for leverage. Knowledge is power, and documented knowledge is permanent power. Second, you begin building alliances with the people above and around this individual. Not by talking about them. Never talk about them. Talk about yourself. Share your work. Make your contributions visible. Let your competence speak so loudly that any attempt to diminish it sounds absurd. Third, and this is the coldest move, you include this person in your success. You credit them publicly. You bring them into projects. You make them feel safe. Because a person who feels safe around you drops their guard, and a person who drops their guard reveals their true agenda, their alliances, their weaknesses. Information that, if you ever need it, gives you total strategic advantage. This is not revenge. This is architecture. You are not trying to destroy this person. You are trying to position yourself so far above the conflict that it becomes irrelevant. And the most effective way to do that is to make the underminer believe they have nothing to fear from you, even as you systematically build a position that makes their attacks impotent. Scenario 2. The demanding relationship. Someone in your personal life takes more than they give. They call when they need you, disappear when you need them. They expect your time, your energy, your emotional labor, but offer nothing in return. The weak response is to have a vulnerable conversation about your feelings. The problem with this approach is that it gives the other person information about your vulnerabilities. It places you in the role of the person who needs something from them, and it rarely changes behavior. People who take do not stop taking because you ask them to stop. They stop when taking becomes unprofitable. The Machiavellian response: reduce your availability without explanation. Do not announce a boundary, simply become less available. Return calls later. Be busy more often. Show through your actions, not your words, that your time has a cost. What happens next is predictable and powerful. The person who has been taking from you will notice the change. They will feel the absence of a resource they had taken for granted, and they will either rise to the occasion and begin investing in the relationship, which tells you they are worth keeping, or they will disappear, which tells you they never valued you in the first place. Either way, you win. Either way, you have your answer, and you got it without a single vulnerable, self-diminishing conversation. Scenario 3. The high-stakes negotiation. Whether it is a salary discussion, a business deal, or any exchange where something of value is on the table, the weak approach is to state your position and hope the other party agrees. The strategic approach involves 3 phases. Phase 1. Research. Before you enter any negotiation, know more than the other party expects you to know. Know their constraints. Know their alternatives. Know what they cannot afford to lose. Information, in negotiation, is the only real weapon. Everything else is theater. Phase 2. Anchor high. Your opening position should be ambitious enough to create space for movement, but not so outrageous that you lose credibility. This sets the frame. This tells the other party the range in which the conversation will happen. And whoever sets the range controls the range. Phase 3. Be willing to walk away. This is the nuclear option, and it is also the most powerful tool you have. The willingness to leave, visibly and calmly, without desperation and without anger, shifts the entire power balance. Because the moment the other party believes you might walk, they begin negotiating with themselves. They begin calculating what they will lose if you leave, and from that moment forward, they are working to keep you, not the other way around. Machiavelli wrote that the best negotiations are won before they begin. He was right. By the time you sit at the table, you should already know the outcome. Not because you can predict the future, but because you have done the work to understand the variables, the pressures, and the motivations of everyone involved. And with that understanding, you do not guess. You execute. Now let me address the errors, because knowing what to do is only half the equation. Knowing what not to do is equally critical. And there are specific, predictable mistakes that destroy power faster than any external enemy. Error 1. Emotional retaliation. When someone wrongs you, the most natural response is to strike back, to match their energy, to show them that you are not someone to be pushed around. This feels satisfying in the moment, and it is catastrophic in the long term. Because emotional retaliation is predictable, it is exactly what your opponent expects. It is the reaction they planned for. And when you deliver the expected reaction, you confirm that they have power over you. They pushed a button and you jumped. You became a puppet on their string. The antidote is delay. When provoked, do nothing. Wait. Let the emotional storm pass through you without acting on it. And then, only when you are calm, only when your response is driven by strategy instead of emotion, then act, if you act at all. Because often, the most devastating response to provocation is no response at all. The silence that follows an attack, when the attacker expected chaos, is the most destabilizing weapon in existence. Error 2. Over-explaining yourself. Every time you justify, rationalize, or explain your decisions to people who did not ask and do not deserve the explanation, you diminish your authority. You send the signal that your choices require external approval to be valid. The powerful do not explain. They decide. If their decision is questioned, they provide the minimum context necessary and move on. They do not engage in lengthy justifications because they understand that justification is a form of seeking permission after the fact. And seeking permission, in any form, at any time, is the behavior of someone who does not fully trust their own authority. Error 3. Being consistently available. If you are always reachable, always responsive, always ready, you teach the world that your time has no value. Scarcity, remember, creates value. The person who is sometimes unavailable, who does not answer every message within seconds, who has periods of unreachability, signals that their time is spoken for. That there are demands on them beyond this conversation, this relationship, this interaction. And that signal, subtle as it is, fundamentally changes how people value your presence. You do not need to be rude. You do not need to ignore people. You simply need to demonstrate, through the natural rhythm of your availability, that your time is a limited resource. Because it is. Error 4. Broadcasting your next move. This is perhaps the most common and most devastating mistake. People announce their plans. They share their goals. They tell everyone what they are going to do before they do it. And in doing so, they give their potential opponents time to prepare, time to counter, time to position themselves. Machiavelli would be horrified by the modern tendency to broadcast intentions. He understood that surprise is one of the most potent strategic advantages available. Not the dramatic, theatrical kind of surprise. The quiet kind. The kind where you execute a plan so smoothly and so quietly that by the time anyone notices, it is already done. Keep your plans to yourself. Let your results do the announcing. Let the world discover your moves through your achievements, not through your mouth. Error 5. Seeking validation from the wrong sources. This is the trap that ensnares the intelligent more than the ignorant. Capable people often seek approval from the very people they should be leading. They want their peers to validate their ideas. They want their competitors to acknowledge their skill. They want the crowd to confirm their direction. And this need for validation makes them vulnerable. Because the moment you need someone's approval, they control you. They hold the key to your forward motion. They become the gatekeeper of your progress. Choose your validators carefully. Seek counsel from mentors who have achieved what you aspire to. Seek feedback from people whose judgment you respect and whose motives you trust. But never seek validation from the audience you are trying to lead. A king does not ask his subjects for permission to rule. He rules, and the quality of his rule determines whether his subjects follow willingly. At this point, something has shifted inside you. You can feel it. The way you are processing these words is different from how you processed information an hour ago. There is a sharpness now, a clarity. The fog of conditioning is thinning, and through it, you can see the outlines of the person you are becoming. Not the person the world tried to make you, not the polite, patient, waiting version that was manufactured by systems designed to keep you small, but the real version, the version that has always existed beneath the programming, beneath the conditioning, beneath the carefully maintained humility that was never yours to begin with. This is the transformation in motion. And it is not finished, not even close. Because the final phase, the phase where everything consolidates, where the metamorphosis completes, where you step fully into the identity of the person who takes power instead of waiting for it, that is what awaits in the final chapter. Stay. Because this is the moment everything changes. This is the transformation that cannot be reversed. You are not the same person who pressed play on this video. You know that. You can feel the difference in the way these words are landing now compared to how they would have landed before. Before, you might have resisted. Before, you might have argued. Before, the conditioning would have kicked in, the little voice that says, "This is too dark, too cold, too ruthless. This is not who I am." But that voice is quieter now, is it not? That voice has been losing ground with every minute of this video because it was never your voice. It was the voice of a system that needed you tame. It was the voice of every teacher who rewarded your compliance, every employer who profited from your patience, every relationship that survived only because you agreed to shrink. And now, standing on the other side of everything you have heard, you realize something that cannot be unlearned. You realize that you have been playing a role you did not audition for, a role you did not choose, a role that was assigned to you before you were old enough to question it. And the script of that role reads like this: be good, be patient, be humble, wait your turn, do not take too much space, do not want too much, do not reach too far, and above all, do not become the kind of person who takes power. Let power come to you. If it is meant for you, it will find you. That script is finished. Tear it apart. Let the pages scatter, because you are writing a new one now. And the author of this new script does not ask permission, does not wait, does not hope. The author of this new script decides, acts, claims, and then allows the world to adjust. This is the metamorphosis, and I want you to understand what it means. Not in abstract terms, not in motivational platitudes, in the cold, clear, unromantic reality of what is happening inside you right now. You are not becoming a different person. You are becoming the person you always were before the world got to you, before the conditioning, before the programming, before the carefully constructed cage of acceptable behavior that you mistook for your personality. The hunger you have felt your entire life, the restlessness, the sense that something is wrong, that you are operating below your capacity, that the life you are living is a fraction of the life you were designed for, that was not dissatisfaction. That was your authentic self, trapped beneath layers of social programming, screaming to be released. And now it is being released. Not explosively, not dramatically, quietly, the way a blade is unsheathed, slowly, deliberately, with a cold inevitability that does not need to announce itself. Because the most dangerous transformations are the ones no one sees coming. The most powerful shifts are the ones that happen internally, silently, invisibly, until one day the people around you look at you and realize that the person standing before them is not the person they thought they knew. And they will not be able to articulate what changed. They will not point to a single moment, a single action, a single word. They will simply feel that the gravitational field around you has intensified, that your presence has become heavier, that your silence has become louder, that the space you occupy has become somehow more significant. And they will be right. Let me consolidate what you have learned, not to repeat it, to forge it, to take the raw material of everything you have absorbed and shape it into a weapon you can carry for the rest of your life. First, power is taken, not given. This is the foundational truth. Every other principle rests upon it. The world does not distribute power based on merit, on goodness, on patience, or on any other virtue you were taught to cultivate. The world distributes power based on one criterion: who is willing to claim it. And from this moment forward, you are willing. You are not waiting for someone to notice you. You are not waiting for someone to promote you. You are not waiting for the universe to deliver what you deserve. You are going to stand up, reach out, and take what is yours. Not with violence, not with cruelty. With the quiet, irresistible force of someone who has decided that waiting is no longer an option. Second, Controlled opacity is your armor. You do not owe the world your thoughts, your plans, your feelings, or your next move. You share strategically. You reveal what serves your position and protect what could compromise it. Your inner world is a fortress, and the gates open only for those who have earned the privilege. Everyone else sees the walls, and the walls are enough. Third, strategic indifference is your leverage. The moment you stop needing an outcome, you begin controlling it. The moment you project the calm confidence of someone who can walk away, the world begins working to keep you. Not because you played a game, because you understood a truth that most people are too desperate to see. Value is created by scarcity, and the scarcest thing in this world is a person who does not need its approval. Fourth, calculated authority is your birthright. You do not need permission to lead. You do not need a title to command respect. You need only the decision to operate as the authority in your own life. Speak with certainty. Move with purpose. Decide with conviction. And let the world organize itself around the gravitational pull of your clarity. Fifth, emotional sovereignty is your fortress. No one controls your internal state. No insult, no rejection, no provocation, no disappointment penetrates the walls of your inner citadel unless you lower the drawbridge yourself. Your emotions are tools, not masters. They inform you. They do not command you. And the person who cannot be emotionally destabilized cannot be defeated, because every attack depends on creating a reaction, and you no longer react. You respond, on your terms, in your time, with your chosen strategy. Sixth, the long game is your dynasty. While the world chases instant results, you build structures that compound over time. Every relationship you cultivate, every skill you develop, every strategic decision you make is a brick in an edifice that grows taller and stronger with every passing month. You are not playing for today. You are playing for the day. Years from now, when you look at the life you have built and realize that every sacrifice, every delayed gratification, every moment of disciplined patience was worth it. Because you did not build a sandcastle. You built a fortress, and fortresses do not wash away with the tide. Let me take you deeper into what this consolidation means in practical terms, because I want you to leave this video not just inspired, but armed. Armed with a clarity so sharp that every decision you make from this point forward carries the weight of intention. Consider the person you were a year ago. Think about how that version of you handled conflict, how that version responded to disrespect, how that version negotiated, how that version entered rooms, engaged with people, made decisions about their own life. That person, that earlier version, was operating on autopilot, responding to stimuli with pre-programmed reactions installed by decades of conditioning. Someone pushed, and that person either pushed back with unfocused anger or retreated with quiet resentment. Neither response was strategic. Neither response was chosen. Both were reflexive, predictable, and exploitable by anyone paying attention. Now picture the version of you that walks out of this video. That version does not react. That version assesses, calculates, decides. That version does not enter rooms hoping to be noticed. That version enters rooms with an energy that reshapes the atmosphere, not through volume, not through performance, through the unmistakable aura of someone who has done the inner work, someone who has dismantled the old programming and replaced it with a system of thought that is built for dominance, resilience, and strategic excellence. The difference between those two versions is not time. It is not experience. It is not resources. The difference is awareness. The awareness that you have been given in this video. The awareness of how power actually works, how perception shapes reality, how emotional mastery creates invincibility, how strategic thinking compounds into permanent advantage. That awareness, once installed, cannot be removed. It becomes the lens through which you see everything. And once you see the world through this lens, every interaction becomes an opportunity. Every challenge becomes a testing ground. Every setback becomes raw material for your next advance. Think about the great strategists throughout history. Think about how they viewed adversity. When Machiavelli was exiled from Florence, stripped of his political position, and forced into rural obscurity, he did not collapse into bitterness. He wrote, he took the years of practical experience he had accumulated as a diplomat and a political advisor, and he distilled them into principles that would outlast every government that had ever employed him. His exile, his defeat, his loss, became the furnace in which the prince was forged. And that book, born from failure, has influenced more leaders, more strategists, more thinkers than any triumph could have produced. That is the mindset you are adopting, not the mindset that avoids failure, the mindset that metabolizes failure. That takes every loss, every rejection, every disappointment, and extracts from it the lesson, the insight, the strategic advantage that was hidden inside the pain. Most people run from failure. They hide it. They deny it. They let it define them as losers. The Machiavellian mind does the opposite. It runs toward failure. It studies failure with the same intensity that a general studies the battlefield after a loss. Not to mourn, to learn, to ensure that the same mistake is never repeated, to ensure that the next engagement is fought from a position that accounts for everything the previous loss revealed. This is why you will succeed where others fail. Not because you are smarter, though you may be. Not because you are more talented, though you likely are. But because you now possess a framework for turning every experience, positive or negative, into fuel for your ascent. The person who can do this, who can extract value from pain and profit from defeat, is playing a game that has no ceiling. Because their growth is not dependent on favorable conditions. Their growth is dependent only on their willingness to process, adapt, and advance. And that willingness, that relentless, iron-willed commitment to forward motion regardless of circumstance, is what makes a true sovereign. Now I want to reveal something to you. A paradox. A truth so deep and so counterintuitive that it will challenge everything you think you have understood, even after everything you have heard. And it is this. The ultimate expression of power is not domination. It is liberation, not the liberation of others, though that may follow. The liberation of yourself from the need for approval, from the fear of judgment, from the prison of other people's expectations, from the exhausting, soul-draining performance of being who you were told to be instead of who you actually are. Machiavelli is remembered as the philosopher of ruthlessness, of cold calculation, of heartless strategy. And yes, his teachings contain all of those elements. But beneath them, beneath the tactics and the strategies and the cold pragmatism, there is something else. Something that most readers miss because they are too focused on the surface. Beneath it all, Machiavelli was writing about freedom. The freedom that comes from seeing the world clearly. The freedom that comes from understanding how power works so thoroughly that you are never again its victim. The freedom that comes from mastering yourself so completely that no external force can master you. That is what you have been building toward this entire time. Not the ability to control others, the ability to control yourself. Not the ability to manipulate situations, the ability to navigate them with clarity and purpose. Not the ability to dominate, the ability to choose your responses, to choose your battles, to choose your path, to choose for the first time in your life without the invisible hand of conditioning guiding your decisions. This is the paradox of Machiavellian power. The one who seeks to control the world must first achieve total sovereignty over themselves, and the one who achieves total sovereignty over themselves discovers that controlling the world was never the point. The point was becoming the kind of person who could, and choosing from that position of absolute capability, how to use that power with wisdom, with precision, and yes, with a humanity that is all the more genuine because it comes from strength rather than weakness. Compassion from a weak person is not compassion, it is compliance. They are kind because they cannot afford to be otherwise. Compassion from a powerful person, from someone who could dominate but chooses not to, from someone who could destroy but chooses to build, that is genuine compassion. That is the highest expression of human character. And that is what this journey has been preparing you for, not to become heartless, to become so strong that your heart is a choice, not a vulnerability, not to become cold, to become so self-possessed that your warmth is given freely, not extracted through manipulation or guilt. Machiavelli understood this, even if the world has spent 5 centuries refusing to read him deeply enough to see it. He wrote about the prince who is feared because he understood that fear is often a prerequisite for respect. But he also wrote that the ideal prince is both feared and loved. And the path to being both is not through cruelty. It is through competence, through the kind of towering, undeniable excellence that commands admiration and inspires loyalty. Through the demonstration, day after day, decision after decision, that you are the kind of leader worth following. Not because you demand it, because you have earned it through the quality of your choices, the consistency of your character, and the depth of your vision. That is the final lesson. Power taken without purpose is tyranny. Power taken with purpose, with vision, with the understanding that true strength is expressed through creation rather than destruction, that is sovereignty. That is kingship. That is the Machiavellian ideal that history has tried to bury because it is too threatening to the systems that depend on your passivity. You are no longer passive. You walked into this video as one person. You are walking out as another. Not because I changed you, because I showed you what was already there. The hunger, the sharpness, the strategic mind that has been dulled by years of playing someone else's game. The lion that was told it was a lamb. The sovereign that was convinced it was a servant. All I did was hold up a mirror. And in that mirror, you saw something you will never be able to unsee. You saw power. Your power. Not borrowed, not given, not dependent on anyone's permission or approval. Yours, innate, permanent, waiting to be claimed. And now, in this final moment, I want to give you something. Not advice, not a tactic, a commitment, a declaration that seals everything you have learned into the architecture of your identity. If this message resonated in you, if you felt the shift, if something in you recognized these truths not as new information, but as ancient knowledge you had forgotten, then comment below the phrase, "Power is not given. It is claimed, and I am claiming mine." This is not just a comment. This is a declaration. A silent oath between you and the version of yourself that existed before the conditioning, before the programming, before the world convinced you that wanting power was wrong. This is you, reaching across time, taking the hand of the person you were always meant to be, and saying, "I see you. I am ready. We begin now." And if you have watched this far, if you have stayed through every word, every principle, every truth, then you already know what this channel represents. This is not entertainment. This is not content. This is a forge, a place where the old version of you is burned away, and the new version is tempered in the fire of truths that the world would prefer you never hear. By subscribing to this channel, you are not clicking a button. You are entering a covenant. You are declaring that you are no longer satisfied with the comfortable lies, that you are ready for the uncomfortable truths, that you are willing to carry the weight of your own power instead of handing it to anyone who asks. You are joining a silent army of individuals who have chosen to see the world as it is, not as it was described to them. And that army, quiet as it is the most dangerous force on this planet. Because it is made up of people who cannot be controlled, cannot be manipulated, cannot be reduced, and will not be stopped. This is your fortaleza. This is your fortress. And every time you return here, you sharpen the blade that the world tried to convince you did not exist. Now go. Go into the world that tried to make you small and show it what happens when a sovereign awakens. Go into the room that tried to ignore you and make it impossible to look away. Go into the relationship that tried to diminish you and demonstrate through your actions and your presence and your unshakable composure that you are no longer available for smallness. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the bold, but he also wrote something deeper, something that is often overlooked. He wrote that fortune is like a river. When it floods, it destroys everything in its path. But the wise prince, the one who thinks ahead, the one who prepares, the one who builds levees and channels long before the rain begins, that prince is not destroyed by the flood. That prince channels the flood, uses it, directs its power toward his own ends. And when the waters recede, it is his fields that are fertile, his territory that has grown, his position that has strengthened. You are that prince now. The flood is coming. It has always been coming. The chaos, the competition, the challenges, the tests, the betrayals, the disappointments. They are inevitable, but you are no longer standing in the open, hoping the waters will pass you by. You have built your levees. You have dug your channels. You have prepared your position. And when the flood arrives, it will not destroy you. It will feed you. It will nourish the empire you are building. It will wash away the weak foundations of everyone who chose comfort over strategy, and it will leave you standing, stronger than before, on ground that you claimed with your own hands. Go now, and carry this with you. Power is not earned through patience. Power is not granted through merit. Power is not delivered by the universe in response to your goodness. Power is a decision, a daily, deliberate, unrelenting decision to operate at the level you were designed for, regardless of whether the world is ready for you. And the world, I promise you, is never ready. That is the point. That is the advantage. That is the weapon. They will never be ready for you. And that is exactly how you want it. Va agora. And let your silence be your declaration, your strategy be your shield, and your presence be the kind of power that does not need to announce itself. Because the ones who announce their power do not have it, and you have it now.